Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Market Update, where we discuss leading financial and economic developments in Europe, Asia, and North America. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And first up, we begin in Europe. Germany is preparing to approve a 7.5 billion euro, $8.7 billion defense procurement package this week, another sign of the scale of its transformation from post-war pacifism to active rearmament. But even as Berlin retools its military to confront a resurgent Russia, the country faces an equally formidable internal battle, the rising cost of its vast welfare state. The defense plan, reviewed by the National Budget Committee, marks one of the largest military investments since Chancellor Friedrich Merz came to power. The core of the package is a 3.5 billion euro order for 274 armed reconnaissance vehicles from General Dynamics Corp, with delivery starting in 2028. Another 3.4 billion euros will fund 150 infantry fighting vehicles arriving between 2027 and 2031. Germany will also spend 386 million euros on so-called evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, slated for delivery in the early 2030s. The surge in procurement continues Berlin's post-Ukraine shift towards strategic deterrence, financed by suspending the constitutional debt brake. Since Russia's invasion, Merz and his finance minister have argued that the fiscal discipline must yield to defense readiness, a message that has resonated with NATO allies but unsettled Germany's fiscal conservatives. Yet even as the tanks and missiles are ordered, the coalition's biggest test may lie not in the armories but in the pension offices. Germany's economic malaise, 2 years of contraction, aging demographics, and stagnant investment, is colliding with a welfare model that consumes nearly a third of GDP. Social spending reached 1.3 trillion euros, $1.5 trillion last year, about 31.2% of output, the highest share since 1960, excluding the pandemic years. A quarter of the federal budget now goes to pensions alone. Economists warn that without reform, Germany's social security contributions, split between companies and workers, will rise from 40% of gross income in 2022 to almost 53% by 2050. Business leaders share that anxiety. High labor costs helped push auto parts giant Bosch to cut 13,000 jobs, while the country's powerful engineering lobby warned that rising welfare costs were, quote, pure poison, end quote, for competitiveness. Germany ranks 19th in IMD's Global Competitiveness Index, dragged down by what analysts describe as an overextended welfare state. Political tensions are deepening too, when Merz declared in August that Germany's welfare system was, quote, no longer financially sustainable, end quote. Social Minister of the SPD fired back that his claim was, quote, bullshit. End quote. The coalition has since agreed on modest curbs to unemployment benefits for those skipping job centre appointments, but broader reforms such as aligning the retirement age with life expectancy remains politically radioactive. The finance minister insists reform must blend efficiency with social fairness. His advisor has called for an, quote, autumn of reforms, end quote, to streamline bureaucracy and speed investment approvals, arguing that growth, not austerity, must carry the welfare burden. Still, a government commission tasked with producing a long-term plan won't deliver proposals until late next year. Germany's new military assertiveness thus contrasts sharply with its economic inertia. As one of Merz's own advisors, Veronica Grimm, puts it, quote, we used to finance social spending with our peace dividend. That no longer works. Now we finance it with debt, and that cannot last. End quote. Next up, we move across the Atlantic to North America. JPMorgan Chase, the massive American bank, has unveiled a sweeping 10-year plan to channel up to $1.5 trillion into industries deemed essential to U.S. national security, including $10 billion of its own capital to take equity stakes in companies driving America's industrial resilience. The initiative marks one of the clearest signs yet that corporate America is aligning with America First policy frameworks long championed by the U.S. president, emphasizing economic independence and strategic self-sufficiency. Announced yesterday, the plan reflects CEO Jamie Dimon's growing concern that the United States has become over-reliant on foreign suppliers for key materials and technologies. Quote, it has become painfully clear that the U.S. has allowed itself to become too reliant on unreliable sources of critical minerals, products, and manufacturing, end quote, Dimon said, adding, quote, if America isn't strong, there's no global security, end quote. The bank will target 4 primary areas: supply chains and advanced manufacturing, defense and aerospace, energy independence and resilience, and frontier and strategic technologies such as semiconductors and AI. The $10 billion investment pool, drawn directly from JPMorgan's balance sheet, will focus primarily on US companies through direct equity and venture capital placement. Quote, "This is not philanthropy," end quote, he stressed, adding, quote, "This is 100% commercial. We're going to take our research, bankers and investors to scour the US and maybe the world for new opportunities," end quote. Beyond its proprietary investments, JPMorgan plans to finance or facilitate an additional $1 trillion over the next decade for clients in critical sectors, an ambition now expanded by 50% to reach $1.5 trillion. The bank also intends to hire more bankers and establish an extra advisory council of public and private sector lenders to guide the effort. While the megabank CEO insisted he had not coordinated with government officials, the plan dovetails neatly with Washington's focus on reshoring strategic industries and reducing dependence on China, especially in rare earth minerals and advanced technological supply chains, for very obvious reasons, which we've been following in recent days. Diamond, one of Wall Street's most influential voices, has previously tied JP Morgan's financing goals to public priorities such as climate action. His latest move positions America's largest bank as a key player in the country's drive toward economic strength and industrial sovereignty. Next up, we have one more development to cover, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode of Market Update, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want to continue to be on top of more updates like this, through grounded and sober analysis, consider subscribing and hit that bell notification icon. And finally for today, South Korea is reassessing its landmark $350 billion investment commitment in the United States after Washington submitted a revised proposal that could determine the fate of a long-awaited trade deal. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun told lawmakers on Monday yesterday that Seoul is reviewing a new alternative from Washington, hinting at progress after months of stalled negotiations over the scope and structure of the massive investment plan. The agreement, originally struck in July, has been held up by disputes over how the investment should be made. The initial framework included a mix of direct investment, loans, and loan guarantees, but U.S. negotiators later demanded that the full $350 billion be provided as direct investment. Cho warned that such an approach would impose, quote, immediate foreign exchange pressures, end quote, and jeopardize Korea's financial stability, noting that the package represented more than 80% of the nation's foreign reserves. Seoul has also sought a U.S. currency swap arrangement to mitigate potential liquidity risks, arguing that the absence of such a safeguard could undermine confidence in Korea's financial markets. Quote, "We've explained to the U.S. that a one-sided structure would harm our economy," end quote, Cho said, emphasizing that Seoul aims for a, quote, mutually beneficial deal, end quote. Negotiations have taken place against a shifting geopolitical backdrop. The Trump administration has signaled both a readiness to ease trade frictions with China and continued criticism of Beijing's export controls, which it is willing to use tariffs to combat. Seoul hopes to achieve progress by the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, APEC Summit, in late October, where President Lee of South Korea is expected to meet with the US President for direct talks. Under the broader trade framework, Washington has agreed to cap tariffs on South Korean imports at 15%, lower than the 25% rate initially proposed, while expanding duties on Korean automobiles. The investment package is viewed as the central pillar of this arrangement, which both governments have framed as essential to deepening industrial cooperation in sectors like shipbuilding and advanced manufacturing. Cho reaffirmed Seoul's position, quote, "We'll pursue a deal that creates win-win outcomes, not one that favors only the US, even if it takes more time," end quote. Okay, that is today's episode of Market Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Tuesday, and I hope to see you for the next episode tomorrow.